So historically and for decades, for my whole life, China has become the world's workshop, right? Everything was sent to China for manufacturing because it was too expensive to manufacture anywhere else to competitively sell it. So everything gets manufactured in China. I'll tell one anecdotal story. I have a friend who used to work at a company, I'm not going to name them, that sold a very simple but mechanical, mostly metal product, but it had a couple of like moving components to it, very simple moving components. Most of the parts were manufactured in America. In fact, here in Utah, actually, manufactured here. All of the components, though, all of them were boxed up, packaged up, shipped to China just for assembly.
Really? For assembly?
And they'd ship them back.
So assembly that's shocking to me.
Because labor's so cheap, or was so cheap at the time.
But it sounds like it was a simple little widget.
And it is. It would shock you to see what they were doing. And when they did all the math of labor costs and everything else, it's cheaper to box them all up, ship them all to China, have the couple of components snapped together in place, pressed in place, and then ship them all the way back.
Oh my gosh. You look at, okay, the hassle of that all, but look at the environmental impact of shipping a thing literally around the world to have it put together.
They don't.
Oh my gosh!
So
like it's a broken system.
But that's an example of this sort of globalization of, hey, labor's cheaper over here, and I did the math, and it makes sense. Let's just ship them, get them assembled here, and then they'll ship them back. It's cheaper for us, and that's an American company. That's a lot of times the standard, right? So now you start thinking about what we've been doing. We've basically taken this cheap, gigantic pool of cheap labor for decades and decades and decades, and we've given them all of our manufacturing and all of our work and all of the stuff to actually produce and make things.
And they've been looking at our ideas for 20 years.
Well, there's a whole other part of that, of the IP part too. But they've basically been the builders of everything for decades. Turns out when you do something for decades, you get pretty darn good at it, right? This country has developed an extremely good workforce in terms of manufacturing skill sets, right? They're very good at this kind of thing, right? Now you say, hey, this country now suddenly has lots of income, lots of cash. They're fairly cash rich in some ways, right? There's the whole way in how like all the countries sort of show off how rich they are, the GDP and things like that. We won't get into that, but China has cash, right? They own not most, they own a big portion of our debt.
Yeah,
right. So they're fairly cash rich. Now you say, hey, let's go start educating certain people. Let's go start getting engineers from other places. Let's bring in the engineering and the kind of the science side to it. Well, you've got all the manufacturing, you've got all that, you've got all the production, and you've got a country who is willing to incentivize companies to produce things to export now. It's the perfect storm, right? They were always going to wind up here at some point where they've got all of the skill set, all of the capability, all of the funding and backing and support. Of course they were going to make competitive cars or motorcycles eventually, right? And I think that's what we're seeing now is they've sort of hit this like tipping point of, hey, we're no longer just making cheap like domestic market products anymore. We're not making cheap motorcycles to get people around in China. We're now making products that we're willing to send out and put on the world stage as an export product, right? And now even in America, you're seeing CFMoto dealerships show up.
Right.
Right?
Well, and I think it's even bigger than the motorcycle. It's, for how many years have we like, you hop on eBay or Amazon, which is basically just turned into Bezos eBay, and you find, okay, well, I can go buy the high-end Brembo rotor. It's going to cost me $350. But there's a set of Chinese ones with some name that we've never heard, and it's whatever, and it's $100. And you start looking at it, and you're like, well, I mean, a brake rotor, in the scheme of things, pretty darn simple, right? You have an aluminum carrier, a handful of buttons, and then some steel. And if as long as it's true, it should be fine, right? Early on, nobody was willing to buy those things, but I know several people who have bought these, and they say they're fine. What's your thought on like some of the aftermarket element of motorcycle components coming out of China?
Well, again, I think it goes back to like they've been building stuff for so long. They've gotten really, really dang good at it. I'll give you one example that I'm closer to, just because I've seen plenty of examples of it. Where is basically so Dave and I both ride bicycles quite a bit too. So when you think about carbon fiber bicycles, right, all the chassis of the carbon fiber frames that we run, where are they all produced?
They're all coming out of the Far East somewhere.
The Far East, right? It's Taiwan, it's China, it's this area of the world for several reasons. One, it's cheaper to manufacture there. Two, that country has much less strict emissions and
I'm going to say the expertise.
But because we've been sending the project there for so long, they've developed the expertise. Carbon fiber manufacturing is kind of complicated. It's a bit of a black art.
Right.
But we've asked them to build it for so long because we didn't want that dirty, messy thing in our country.
It is filthy.
It's a gross process.
If you want to, like, we always talk, like, we have, gorgeous carbon fiber helmet sitting behind you, and we all love carbon fiber and whatever. Do a YouTube search and see how carbon fiber is manufactured. And you're going to feel a little sad in your heart about like how dirty it is. You basically, in the early days, I don't know if it's still done like this, but the early days, I think when Pinarello moved their carbon fiber frame production to China, somebody went over there with a camera, and I saw the footage long before AI, and they laid up the carbon fiber and whatever, and they do the thing, and they would just take it outside and run a hose over it and sand it out in the water with all the carbon fibers would just slough
right
off right into the stream. Right? Because they're doing it outside in the trees.
Yep.
And you're like, oh my gosh, right? The impact of like carbon fibers just going into the water supply.
But I think the knock-on effect of that is we've basically been sending all of our sophisticated, deeply engineered products there to get built. Of course, they're learning how they get built and how they get designed and how they get... So we've basically given them all... It's like an internship, right? That's how you learn skill sets, is by doing things. We basically asked them to do these things to the point where a lot of other places now don't do them at all.
Right.
Like if you said right now, where is the best carbon fiber expertise in the world for manufacturing?
I'd say Taiwan.
I mean, I'm sure there's some pockets in Europe and in America where aerospace is big.
My last carbon fiber road bike was a Look, and it was the last, I bought it because it was the very last carbon fiber frame made actually in France.
Interesting.
And I ran it for years because they moved, I think they actually moved just to the other side of the Mediterranean into North Africa, and then it moved to China.
But all right, so we've basically asked them to build all these things. They're going to get very, very good at it. Now go think of, I've got one example. We have a company here in Utah named Envy Composites.
Another bicycles.
They now make frames too, but they make wheels is their real thing.
Yeah, that's where we all get to know them.
Is their
right?
Envy composite wheels.
We used to all envy a set of Envy wheels.
They are gorgeous. They are
so pretty.
Absolute works of art, and they're beautifully manufactured. And you pay for that.
Well, and Specialized has a big thing here with their carbon fiber. There's a lot of bicycle industry here in
Utah specifically,
right?
Yeah. But those components that are manufactured here are fairly boutique. They're small scale. Like you're not going to go see thousands of people on Envy composite wheels, right? Because Envy can only produce so many a year anyway, and they cost an absolute grip of money.
Like $2,000 a wheel or something.
But if you want, you can go online and find a 80%, 90% the same wheel out of China for a fraction.
Yeah, for $600. And this is the question I've always had, is at what point do you start trusting it? Like back to the brake rotors or the carbon fiber wheel, or, a company last year sent me a set of forged wheels made out of China. And I tried to run them through all these tests that I could manage to be like, would I run these? It's not an easy answer.
Right. It's tough too, but like you start looking at it, it feels like we're at that same point that we were with Japan in the 60s, where it was like, I don't know about it, but boy, it sure keeps showing up everywhere I look.
Into the 70s. Japan's still into the mid to late 70s, where I was starting to be aware.
These things don't switch overnight, but I mean, it seems crazy to not think that we're watching it happen right now at this point.
Yeah.